And once the war's over, when this is all said and done, are they going to be thinking back for the rest of their lives like, oh, that one guy, Dimitro, I met, who, lost his leg and he was in really bad condition. Did he make it?
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. I've been filming pretty nonstop for 2 weeks. This is like the first break I've gotten, but it's not really a break. I said it would be a break, but all I've been doing is going through all the footage, taking notes on the footage, editing the footage, and then come Monday, I start my stream schedule again. So I'm kind of skipping the break portion, but I'm keeping busy, and that's good. It's better to be busy than to be bored.
I agree. No, I totally agree. I cannot allow myself to be bored for the last few years at all, so I can totally relate. Okay, so last time you've been to Luhansk Oblast, right?
Yeah, no, this is the first time I've been to Luhansk. It's very difficult to get into Luhansk Oblast now, reporting on the Ukrainian side of the conflict, because like 98% of Luhansk is occupied. Very little of it is still controlled by the Ukrainians. And all of it that is controlled by the Ukrainians, these aren't like big populous cities or settlements. It's mostly just either like little patches of countryside or forest. And I went to the Srebrenica Forest. Also, I always pronounce it incorrectly, but it's also known as the Forest of Miracles. It's been fought over. It's near the Limon axis, and I went the Limon axis, and I went on a BMP mission with some local soldiers on Russian lines. But that wasn't all they did in the last 2 weeks. I also filmed some captured Russian T-80s. I filmed with FPV crews. I filmed with artillery crews on the Volchansk axis. I filmed with Baba Yaga teams. Some fixed-wing drone aircraft on the Chasiv Yar axis. I've been keeping myself busy.
Awesome. A lot of footage to show after you edit all of that.
Yeah, that's the downside, though. I have to edit all of it, and going through, getting every line translated, writing everything down. But it's important. It's important to be involved in the editing process. I need to know what I'm putting out.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, I also started using help of my moderators. Thank you, Nikki Hill, for editing some videos for me. And often I don't have time to even watch them fully, some of them if they are long. So I trust here, but it's like the parts of my streams mostly, it's not like some pre-recorded material that should be properly edited, so that's different. And I understand why you have to be personally involved in all of that and review all of that, because there's also OPSEC, right, that you need to take care of when editing.
Absolutely. I mean, the BMP mission is directly on the Russian line. The positions with the FPV teams are, of course, important. The position with the Baba Yaga teams are important. The artillery teams I was with are important. On the Volchansk axis, I mean, I had seen multiple Ukrainian vehicles that were destroyed by Lancets and artillery positions that were hit by Lancets. And it's really important to make sure that the geolocatable information that is being put out is stuff that's already publicly available. So therefore, it's like not a security risk, like i.e. like big routes that everyone travels, highways, stuff like that, or anything that is geolocatable that could be a security risk is either blurred out, cropped out of frame, or just not shot in the first place. When I was filming with air defense teams 2 weeks ago, it was early June, I just made sure that all my photos of them was just them looking at the sky or just the top of the tree line. And I wasn't taking them from every angle. I just had to make a lot of the work you can deal with beforehand and not have to complicate it later, but just thinking about the shots as you take them. Like, what can I use? Because if I take the shot, I'm not going to be able to use it. So might as well work on the angles I can use.
Yeah, well, there's going to be tons of blurring afterwards, and it's not an easy process if you have some dynamic picture, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the big news agencies, if you wanted to sell photographs, they won't even accept it if it's been digitally altered in some way, because they want to have just completely like undigitally altered photographs that they put out on their publications. And so the stuff that I would digitally alter, I will only use for myself, which is fine, because most of the stuff I self-publish anyway. But I mean, when I was with the air defense teams, there were some cool shots that I was like, this is cool, but I can't publish it. And I have a lot of those. And I just keep them, and they'll never see the light of day until the war is over and there's no longer a security risk.
Yeah, but when the war is over, you have the chance to show them.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for when the war's over and I can publish, I don't know, like just a wave of like photographs that I thought were really cool, but I didn't get to share up to that point. It's going to be nice.
I don't know if you want to give us any predictions, but do you feel like this war might still be going for 10 or more years?
Will this war be going on for 10 or more years? Man, I don't like, I've seen from Mearsheimer and a lot of people that making hard predictions about what will and will not happen is pretty silly, and I have no interest in doing that.
Yeah, same.
And so I'm not going to do that for 10 or 15 years. What I can talk about, and this is what I always do, it's kind of a cop-out, but I think it's a responsible thing to do, is to talk about the factors that could extend it and the factors that could shorten it. And once you have an idea of the factors in your head, I think more people can try to come to a conclusion themselves after seeing the different puzzle pieces that come together, which I think is the better way to approach this question. I think one thing that would either extend the length of the war, shorten the length of the war, has to do with Western aid and whether Western aid is consistent.
Yeah.
If Ukraine has consistency from foreign supporters, so it can plan operations going into the future, and it's not just thinking about surviving day by day, week by week, month by month, then it can start looking towards pathways to end the war. If the Russians start having more aggressive sanctions placed upon them when it comes to microchips or secondhand buyers, where a lot of these goods you'll see right after 2022, Tajikistan and like German trade skyrocketed, or like Tajikistan and Taiwanese trade skyrocketed, because they were being used as workarounds to get microchips and other things into Russia so they can use it for the war economy. If the United States is serious about hyping up the sanctions on these goods and is going to play the cat and mouse game more aggressively in chasing those sanctions, then I think that that's something that could either shorten or lengthen the war, depending on how vigorous they are with being aggressive on sanctions. I think that another factor that matters is how the Ukrainian government deals with the contentious issue of mobilization. If the Ukrainian government's numbers that are being talked about are true, and that the mobilization has increased in the month of May substantially and is going to continue to increase, then that is something that could either shorten or lengthen the war. And so these are the factors that I'm trying to gauge and look at. And recent signals for me when it comes to Western aid tells me that the aid is starting to arrive. From my conversations on frontline with soldiers, I'm hearing that the ammo shortage is not as bad as it was, especially back in February. I'm hearing reports from the front line that I went to training centers, that they are getting new recruits in. Now, a lot of these recruits are older. A lot of these recruits are people that probably would have been passed over on the first wave of recruitment, but they are getting recruits. And these types of people, these older individuals have been fighting since the beginning. I was talking to people who were fighting in the ATO back in 2014, 2015, or in their going on their late 50s now. That are now being called back up into service and now are going back into the firing line. Now, that's an issue for another day, but that shows that the government is taking the issue seriously. You wouldn't be seeing these people if the government wasn't going out and aggressively trying to mobilize people. Now, methods of mobilization can be debated, whether the way of the soldier grabbing you off the side of the street and loading you into a car after looking at your documents will go the way of the dodo, and it will all be digitized and dealt with in a different manner. To be more effective, I don't know, but they are being more aggressive in mobilization. So I do think the government is starting to take the issue at least more seriously. So those are two factors in my mind that I think are positive for the Ukrainians. Whether that ends up lengthening or shortening the war will also depend upon what the Russians do in response. Does the Russian government do another wave of mobilization, knowing that another wave of the mobilization would probably make the Putin government a lot less popular? Because the one time Putin's popularity took a real hit was during the first wave of mobilization. Even the Russian state-backed polling seems to indicate that that first wave of mobilization took a real hit to the regime when it came to popularity. Now it quickly rebounded, but 3 years into a 3-day military operation, after one wave of mobilization, you now need to announce a second wave of mobilization with no idea if there's going to be a third, fourth, fifth after that. That's a different conversation around the dinner table for families that are, let's say, more politically apathetic, but are willing to, tolerate the nationalistic chest beating and drumbeat of war that the Russian government has been marching the public to for the last 3 years. because there are a lot of Russians that are like passively supportive, but don't want to be actively engaged in combat. And once they're forced into that, I don't know if the Russian government's going to be willing to deal with the consequences or want to engage with that. And if they're going to have to, if they're going to try to go with some middle road with, well, let's recruit more prisoners, let's try to close some of the existing loopholes. So the Russian response when it comes to mobilization is also going to matter for either lengthening or shortening the war, whether they cut their losses and try to either find a deal that's more sweetening for them or eventually start pulling back and getting put in a more diplomatic, difficult position or military position. I don't know, but that's something that could affect it. Whether or not the Russians go forward with the North Korean deal or they react to the recent South Korean threats is also something that could affect it. I don't want to keep rambling on, but my point is, once you look at all these different varying factors, when someone comes out and says, "Oh, this war's got 2 years tops or 1 year's tops," they're selling you horse hockey. They're selling you nonsense.
Yeah, you're right. I totally agree with this. Also, wanted to mention that. The Russian mobilization, they actually don't need a huge mobilization because they are recruiting 40,000 people every month, and it's enough for them to replenish their losses. And it is going successfully because the recruits keep coming because they are poor and they know nothing about this war. They are fantasizing that they are going to be used somewhere in the rear or just as a transportation, you know, all that bullshit. I keep hearing it in the interviews of Zolkin and Karpenko. They keep being stupid and thinking that they come here to get easy money. So I don't think mobilization in Russia will be a big problem, and it is needed at all because they have this hidden mobilization, which is really giving them what they want and in enough quantities. You see, they keep advancing on the new fronts, and they keep, they have enough people to do that. So
I don't know, because on one hand, it is true that the Russians obviously have a much larger population. There are still Russians, a lot, who are looking at the military contracts being told, wow, that's the amount of money I can't make anywhere else. We're in an economically destitute situation. I live in Murmansk, you know, this isn't exactly the most thriving tech hub in the world. So I'm going to take this military contract and try to get myself ahead. I'm sure I'll just get a job driving a loaf around, and then they find out that that loaf is getting targeted by FPVs or that they're getting reassigned to some unit they didn't expect to. But there's only so many times that they can basically lie to the same people over and over and over and get the same. You almost, I don't want to say you run out of gullible people, but eventually, even if there's still a lot more gullible people, stories spread around about pay, stories spread around about whether that's consistent, the conditions of the combat. This type of stuff tends to get out. It got out during the Soviet period about the war in Afghanistan, and it'll probably, with time, as it already has in many communities, get out as well. Recruitment numbers have been starting to trickle down. This is something that's even been reported by Russian state media, and they've been trying to compensate with by trying to beat the drum. That doesn't mean they're saying, oh, we can't get enough. They're just saying, no, we don't have the same enthusiasm. Where are the people that there used to be? So they seem to have the same problem that I also hear from a lot of Ukrainian recruiters, is that the enthusiasm has gone down. The enthusiasm of, that, oh, let's all get the money. But the problem is the Russians can dig more into financial incentives than Ukrainians can. The Ukrainian government cannot offer everybody $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 a month in order to try to mobilize people. The Russians also are recruiting, and I think this points towards the fact that they really do have problems with recruitment, a lot more foreign mercenaries, a lot more Cubans, a lot more Sri Lankans, a lot more Africans, Sudanese, Syrians, whoever they can get their hands on, telling them tales of big baskets of gold for very little work. And then they find themselves in forward operating positions, operating in active combat zones that they didn't think they were going to. Now, these aren't going to be the best soldiers in the world, but their job isn't to be the best soldier in the world. Their job is to die in the place of somebody in Moscow, which could have a political consequence for Putin, where if somebody from Sri Lanka dies, that dude doesn't, I mean, he's from Sri Lanka. He has no real influence in Russian politics. He has no influence in the body politic. He has no influence he's isolated. He doesn't speak the language, even better. So he can't tell anybody what the problems are. So I think that even though that does fill the manpower pool, it does show desperation, because no army would probably want to take people who can't even speak the language and have them go fight unless they were desperate for soldiers. The question is, I think fundamentally, whether or not through a consistency in aid and war planning and well-staffed Ukrainian positions, they can grind the Russians down enough so that they're put in a position where all these fixes and little plugs that they've put in the boat to try to stop themselves from sinking isn't enough, that the hole is just too big, that they can't fill it with, I don't know what word to use, but like the mobilization table scraps that they're trying to put together now to keep the
flow
keep
of the fresh meat going, going in. Got it. Sorry for interrupting you. I think we can just hope for that number of those holes.
Especially if they do what they did in Volchansk, with just, we're going to reduce the armored assaults. It's just going to be more and more infantry assaults. If that is a sign of things to come, that is not something that is endlessly sustainable for the Russian army. Just like the armored assaults are not endlessly sustainable for the Russian army, because they simply just can't even refurbish enough tanks to keep that up forever. And that's why we're seeing older and older model tanks out there. And that's why we're starting to see even some things that aren't tanks being used in a capacity to assault positions that haven't been seen in service since like the 1950s.
Yeah, exactly. So before the stream, I've created a community post where I asked people to ask you questions beforehand. So it's like Q&A stream. So we have a lot of questions already waiting to be answered. So let's go and read them. First one was, well, actually first three was from Ara from USA. Questions for Dylan. First one, is Dylan concerned about American politics and political decisions stopping aid to Ukraine?
Yes, I think it was Viktor Orban said recently, after he made this deal with Mark Rutte, who is the incoming new NATO secretary, who it's agreed, it's not formally announced, but it's already agreed to, that the former Dutch prime minister will be the new big head cheese at NATO. And the deal is that Viktor Orban's government doesn't have to send any aid to Ukraine whatsoever. In return, he won't block any initiatives. And then when he was announcing this, which personally, I think that Hungary should invest in Europe's security just like everyone else. But if they're not blocking it, that's better than like the deadlock that we were seeing. The idea that just like one country stopping Ukraine's defense through hostage tactics so they can get more aid for their unbelievably corrupt public sector, I don't like that. So if we can avoid that, great. But afterwards, he said, the only thing that can stop this crazy train to war now is the election of Donald Trump. And this is kind of like this open, tacit admission that Trump is almost like a final Hail Mary to try to upset European and American support for Ukraine, when we're really starting to see a kind of rebounding of not only aid that is starting to flow back into the country, not only American aid, but also the Czech initiative finally flowing into the country. I've heard that from multiple soldiers and artillery teams on the front line, that the Czech aid is starting to arrive on top of the American aid starting to flow into the country. So if they want to upset that crazy train, Trump would be the idea. I mean, the political decisions are rebounding too. We finally got the decision for Ukraine to be able to use Western weapons to strike over the border. And first it was Belgorod, now it's being moved to anywhere where the Russians are attacking from. There's still restrictions upon it. Can't attack the air bases, can't use ATACMS. These restrictions now seem even sillier after we've seen that we've, crossed the red line, blurred it till obscurity, and we're still holding Ukraine back in ways where they could stop these attacks on Ukrainian cities by striking these air bases. But I feel that this is going to be a painfully slow and drawn out process, but we're watching the steps being taken, and it's not in the other direction. It's in the direction that the Ukrainian government and Ukraine supporters have been asking for a while. And so as all this support is rebounding, it does feel like amongst people of Viktor Orban, maybe of a Robert Fico, the Slovaks, or those types, they're starting to put their hopes and dreams in Donald Trump being the one to finally turn the ship around. Seems like they're almost waiting for November.
There's actually, among Ukrainians, there's such a cope. Those so-called experts that speak on Ukrainian TV, those who say, oh, the war is going to be over once F-16s are here, and they are already almost here. They know nothing about that. No shit. So they have that cope. They are actually providing Ukrainians with a cope that when Donald Trump, if Donald Trump is going to become a president, no, he won't stop the aid for Ukraine. He will actually give more aid, military aid to Ukraine, because he was the first one to give any weapons to Ukraine back in, what was it, 2019? He was the first one to give us javelins, and they are really hoping for him. But I think it might be just cope for Ukrainians, for them to don't feel a threat from Donald Trump. Maybe it's also the play of Russians.
I think it's mostly cope. It's not impossible, because Trump is the type of guy that, I remember when he decided to pull out of Syria in the middle of the night, the media kind of railed him for it, because it was a off-the-cuff decision that he made in the middle of the night after Erdogan gave him a phone call, asking him to act what to all of his advisors would go on and say was against America and his interest. Now, people can disagree with that, but later, after Trump went in public and said, well, I pulled out of northeastern Syria because, well, the Kurds weren't with us on D-Day, so are they truly our ally? It was just ridiculous logic. He then reversed the decision. He then reversed it again, and then he reversed it again. And so sometimes it might legitimately matter what side of the bed Trump woke up that morning in making this type of a decision. Because a consistent foreign policy belief structure is something Donald Trump does not have. He has general vibes. Isolationism is a vibe he has, but he also said we need to bomb the families of terrorists. He's a devoutly supporter of Israel. So how isolationist is it if you still want to send tons of weapons to Israel? And so it's these things are not 100% solid with Trump. So it is my scenario was always Donald Trump gets elected, Zelensky gets down there, he's got the slickest suit, his hair slicked back, he's got all the breath mints, he goes in there with his charisma maxed out, and he's like, Trump baby, can you believe the opportunity you have to win the war? Biden couldn't. Could you imagine? And I could see something maybe that type of smooth talking, moving him maybe. But this is the type of stuff that it's Hail Mary. If we're talking about these scenarios, we're already in a bad situation where we have to play the Trump game in order to try to get him to support Ukraine. Try to convince Trump that there's enough in it for him to support Ukraine. That's the only way I think you can get Trump to support Ukraine. I think Biden has been more consistently supportive of Ukraine. There's never been a day he woke up and he was like, Ukraine's getting too much money. We're giving Ukraine too much. That wasn't the thing that he woke up and said. You could say that his support has been milquetoast at times, or it has been bland, but when you wake up, you know what side Biden's on. You're not confused about tomorrow, is Biden just going to 180 on this position? And the consistency and the stability and support is what Ukraine needs more than anything going into any negotiation, which is why not only is Trump, I think, bad for supporting Ukraine through the war, but I think Trump's also bad when it comes to supporting Ukraine through negotiations, because I don't think he's going to be seen as a steadfast opponent. For example, the big thing that people talk about is the javelins that were sent in 2019. It was the first example of lethal aid being sent to Ukraine. Before that, during the Obama administration, they sent radars so the Ukrainians could watch themselves get bombed on a big high-definition screen, which was very helpful. And it was a bunch of things that were not non-lethal aid. But in 2019, that wasn't Trump's initiative we need to send lethal javelins to Ukraine. That was Congress's initiative. They then passed it, and it passed with a veto-proof majority, meaning Trump literally did not have the power to stop the javelins from coming to Ukraine. He could have done anything in the world. It was above his pay grade to do it because it was veto proof. He then blocked it anyway, called Zelensky and asked for information on Hunter Biden. So for me, this is Ukraine's national security interests being leveraged for Trump's personal political gain. Again, if you can make Trump feel that there's something in it for him, then maybe there's something in it for him supporting Ukraine. So I do not think this is a good example of Trump being like a great warrior for Ukraine, especially since if you're the Russians, how do you interpret that? Do you interpret that as, wow, Donald Trump just sent all these javelins to Ukraine? Or do you say the United States sent all those javelins to Ukraine? Trump stopped it until he could get some dirt on his opponent. What are the Russians good at? Hacking organizations, getting dirt on opponents, releasing it into public, that type of dirty politics. You don't think they could think that maybe they could offer something more than the Ukrainians could on that front with, say, Julian Assange, or, you get the idea. My point is, I think that Biden, despite his flaws when it comes to like approval on strikes on air bases, or when it comes to the dragging of the feet, Jake Sullivan's existence in the room. At the end of the day, this is someone where you know where he stands. It has been in Ukraine's corner since the start of the war, even if you haven't always agreed with how he stood in Ukraine's corner or how devoutly he was in Ukraine's corner. Trump, it purely depends on how much is in it for him. And so immediately once he thinks he can sell Ukraine down the river for a new pair of shoes, he will.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's a big difference. Secular Sekai, thank you very much for the super chat. I will ask the question from it after those two questions from RF from USA, okay? Let's go back there. Oh, by the way, I want to take the pause, a quick one, and ask you guys to keep donating, because there were no donations for the last half an hour, and we need to...
No donations? I can't believe that. I'm offended.
Yeah, Dylan's offended, guys. You gotta unoffend him right now. Please send donations. So we're raffling this insane Kraken Patch. Battle worn. Yeah, you see in the frame with the real Fabrique flag underneath of it. This is not the picture. Real flag there. Red and black frame. Dylan, can you believe it? It's been put to the raffle, like put back to the raffle 2 times already. Today it's the last time. So last time Bjorn won it, he put it back on the raffle. I decided to do all the tickets that were bought before to actually use them for the raffle. So we went up to 1,000 tickets. It's $10,000. One ticket is $10. Can you imagine?
That has raised $10,000 for you
already.
Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Yes. Already.
My goodness, that is an expensive patch.
That's a very expensive patch. And people, can you imagine people stop buying tickets for it, guys? What the hell? Come on.
Could you imagine if you not only got a Kraken Patch, but you got the battle-worn $10,000 twice back to raffle Kraken Patch?
Yeah, this is... Now it's above that. We already have today, let me check how many tickets we have. 133 tickets. So plus $1,300. Crazy. $11,300. Guys, we need to reach at least 200 tickets today. Please keep buying tickets. $10 for a ticket. If you're new here, to buy a ticket, go to the description of the stream and you will find my PayPal there. It's preferable. If you can't use PayPal, you can use Buy Me a Coffee, and buy coffees. 1 coffee is $1, so it's easy to count. 10 coffees for a ticket. Guys, also, all the tickets that you're buying this week are gonna give you a chance to win this flag, signed by many soldiers, wounded soldiers. I've been gifted it on the street, Dylan. It's been Free Azov rally. Have you been to one?
I have not been to one, no.
I'm inviting you. Come with me next Sunday if you're gonna be here in Kyiv yet.
If I'm in Kyiv next Sunday, I'll come.
Awesome, thank you. So I went there on Free Azov, and I was just sticking to people, doing the street journalism, And the guy asked English, and I said, yeah. And he appeared to be from Germany. His name is Werner. He's been volunteering here in Ukraine, and he's been actually I don't know how to correctly say it in English, relieving the pain of the soldiers.
Rehabilitation?
No, he has been. I think those soldiers, those wounded soldiers who are in pain, he was helping them with morphine and stuff like that. So he was, yeah.
Oh, pain relief.
Pain relief, yeah, relief in the pain. That's what I meant. You know, but you cannot say it like this in English, right? Pain relief, but no relief in the pain. Anyway, he's been working in different hospitals, and soldiers were signing the flag one by one. The soldiers who he helped to. And he was just like, first we were talking, and you know, I went to the next person to talk to, and he's coming to me saying, hey, you know what, take this flag, auction it, and get some money to our to the Ukrainian soldiers. And I was like, wow, this is very generous. So this flag was dear to him, and he gifted it just like that, not knowing me, like seeing me for the first time, and there are a lot of brigades there.
That's the type of passion people have for fundraising for the army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a very cool story and a very nice flag. So guys, all the tickets that you're buying this week, so those 133 are taking part in the next week's raffle in a week, exactly in a week. And today in 2 hours at midnight Ukrainian time, we're going to raffle the Kraken Patch. But next week at midnight, we're going to raffle this awesome flag. So guys, please keep buying tickets because 67 at least more to go. That's $670. Guys, for you rollers, it's not that much. You've been raising thousands of dollars on the streams. Okay, that's enough for the advertisement of my raffles. Let's go back to the questions. Thank you guys for your attention. Please buy more tickets. Next question from USA. How can average citizens from around the world help the soldiers at the front who don't have a media team? Interesting.
That don't have a media team. See, this is the difficulty. Is I was talking about this on the road recently, and I was watching all these different billboards because the military sometimes will advertise with billboards or advertise with video, and I was like, Azov, third assault, Azov, third assault, Azov, third assault. And I was thinking, like, I don't think I've ever seen a 42nd billboard, but I meant the 42nd, and those are great guys. I don't think I've ever seen a billboard for the 56th or 54th or any of these guys that are super cool. And in fact, when I was with the 54th, they were telling me how they wanted fundraising because they had to take their drone company and expand it. And through expanding it, they needed everything because now that they had more people, they needed more gear for literally everything. And they were looking for fundraising, but they don't have the clout. They don't have people around the corner like calling to get into the 56th or the 54th or any of these units that are less known, but also desperately need resources. Now, the main thing these units can, the main way they can be helped is on a scale that is not through us, which is on the national level, the United States providing more aid, or the government of Ukraine being able to sign more contracts, doing more deals with companies like Rheinmetall that can get a more sustained flow. Because the problem with a lot of these fundraisers, and I'm not mocking any fundraiser, is it's going to come with public attention, right? Sometimes you're going to be able to get 10,000, 5,000, maybe there's a recent victory, maybe there's a surge in attention, maybe the algorithm changes and you're able to bring in a new wave of support, but then the tempo comes down low again, and maybe the mood goes down low again, and the people are maybe less willing to donate on another day. And it's not a consistency that would bode itself for like a solid support base being stable. As for donating directly to units, I would just say personally, if you're going to donate to a unit, what I try to do, and I'm not, as a journalist, of course, like I can't advertise any specific unit, but what I would say would make sense to me is look for units that don't have a gigantic media team. Look for units that when you look at their fundraising video, their camera's shaking a little bit, it's off their phone, it's not like with 360 view and HD 4K. Look for the units that are doing their best to make what they have work, and not the ones that already have all the resources they probably need at the moment, or that they have the vast majority of the resources they need at the moment. Because most of the people that come out and donate are going to go straight to the people who come out first in the search algorithm, the first ones they see on Twitter, the ones that have the media professionals got to put their teams out there, put their faces out there. Look for those smaller guys. As for like what way I could point you towards, I mean, all I'm going to do is like, hey, the 54th, they told me that they need help fundraising for their drone teams. So if anybody wants to help them, I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Good advice. And guys, if you want to actually support Dylan, his link tree is in the description of this stream, and also his website. On his website, you can make a donation. You can see information about him. He's Dylan, can I call you a war journalist?
Yeah, I think you can call me a war journalist at this point.
War journalist, yeah. And anyway, on the ground journalist. He goes there on the front line. He's a very brave man. I'm, for example, a chicken shit, and I never went there yet. And but I'm planning to do this this July. Gonna be a good experience for me. Gonna go there with Greg Terry. Well, I'm announcing this for months. I'm tired of this. I just need to go there. Anyway, guys, please support Dylan because I think he is amazing, and thank you for your work, Dylan.
Thank you. I just got remonetized on YouTube for the first time in 10 months. It was a really long struggle with YouTube. They said I was doing the hate speech. I was very hateful. You know, they said I was doing the content safety policy violations. I don't know, all the horrible crimes. But eventually, after 10 months of demonetization, cost us about $30,000. So I would say a decent chunk of change for a small channel with 2 to 3 employees. They removed the demonetization with no explanation. But hey, at least I'm remonetized again. So the channel is at least returning to financial normalcy. And I appreciate everybody that, and I know some of Rick's viewers did as well, who brought attention to the fact that I was demonetized. I do appreciate that. Yeah,
thank you guys. I know, I actually missed that. Yeah, I didn't support you in that.
You don't? You want me demonetized? Okay, I understand. You're against.
Sorry, man.
You want me to be demonetized? I understand. I'm a pretty hateful guy. I understand.
No, I actually just realized that I didn't help you with that.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Rollers did, but I didn't. Well, I have my excuses, but I won't say any. Sorry, Dylan.
It's okay.
just that. Okay, so people started buying tickets. First of all, there were 10 coffees from Hubert, and I didn't sing along with that. Never gonna run around and desert you, okay? So remember the notification here, Dylan, every time someone buys coffees?
You guys sing the Rick Ashley song every time.
Yeah.
Those donations. I couldn't commit to that. Eventually I'd get tired. Do you get tired?
No, never. I love to see them. I love the song. I love to do the blah blah blah.
Yeah, but do you love the song that much?
Not that much, but I think I got used to it. Like nothing. I think I'm that kind of guy who can sing one song for years. So, just that. Anyway, it's not on every donation. It's only on every Buy Me a Coffee donation. So that means like only 20% of all the donations, and that's not really hard. It's
okay,
like
20% isn't that bad.
Yeah, it's like what? No, 5 to 10, maybe sometimes 15 singing, and I usually don't sing when my guest is speaking to not interrupt the guest. Sometimes I do that.
Please interrupt me with your singing immediately.
Okay. Why?
Because it'd be funny.
It would be funny. Okay, let's do this. So after Hubert on PayPal, Fred Thornbury sent $30, 3 tickets for the Kraken Patch, and I've already put you to the spreadsheet. You've seen that on the screen. And after that, Mr. Kaplan dropped a bomb on us of $512.05.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Money for the pickup truck for 117th Territorial Defense Brigade. For me, 5 tickets. The rest to those who can't afford to buy them. Slava Ukraini. Героям слава, Mr. Kaplan. You are so fucking generous. This is the second donation today from Mr. Kaplan. First one was $250 already.
So that's why he's almost donated $800 tonight.
Yeah, that's insane. Almost 800. Mr. Kaplan is very generous. Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. So I'm gonna give you 5 tickets. And guys, I will give you the command to start giving a pluses when you want the free ticket, and I will put your names there in the spreadsheet for the tickets that Mr. Kaplan just gifted. Thank you. So after that, Michael sent $40. 4 tickets, please. Michael, you have you have yourself those 4 tickets. Thank you, guys. Let me update my PayPal and see. No more. But we're really close to 200 now. Yeah, really close. So just about 10 to 15 tickets and we're there. Next, Yana is joining. Just a second, Yana. I'll need to switch to another scene. Okay, yes. Dylan, do you know Yana?
I think I might have seen them on social media, but I don't think I've met them ever before in person.
Yeah, I'm from Project Constantine. We spoke on Twitter, but you didn't know it was me because I was speaking as Project Constantine.
Okay. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, so Yana, it's always good to see you. You rollers were saying that you like Yana as a co-host on the last stream. So Yana asked, do you want to see me today? And I said, absolutely. So Yana joined. But I said, let's do it in a few hours. And Yana joined in a few hours. So here's Yana.
I'm very obedient like that.
Thank you. Elvin Archer, thank you for the super chat. 2 Great Britain pounds, I think. Just so Dylan can hear you sing. Okay. Never gonna let you down. Holy Oblation bought a coffee. Make Dylan sing. No, laugh. Not sing. It says laugh. Okay, not laughing yet, but I think I needed to sing it for much longer time than just one line, So next time I'll try. Okay, more questions. Next one from Ara from USA, the last one, and then we will go to Sekai's question there. Sekai, I hope you're still there to hear the answer to the question. Anyway, you can watch the recording if you're not there anymore. Okay, the third one was, which projects Dylan working on currently? Anticipated time for release?
So the projects I'm going to be releasing soonest is I just went on a BMP mission with Ukrainian soldiers in Luhansk.
What's a BMP?
A BMP, it is a for the layman, it is a armored vehicle that has a small cannon on it, not as big as a tank, but enough still to do damage. It is not extremely incredibly armored, but if you look at these casualty reports, they make up a large percentage of armored casualties, and that's because these vehicles were basically supposed to be the backbone of combined arms warfare, mechanized warfare, that didn't end up really developing as it was supposed to in this war, but it's still all Soviet armies usually have like huge reserves of these things, even though they are still pretty out of date and terribly, terribly uncomfortable.
Yeah. So BMP, sorry for interrupting you. You were telling a story there, but I know what BMP is, but some of the people might not know that. I'm wondering, what is a BMP mission? Like, you told us what's BMP. What's a BMP mission?
So BMP mission could be a few things. It could be moving troops to a location, they then dismount and then try to do an infantry assault. It could be BMP mission could be a medevac, because maybe there's not another vehicle available, and so they end up having to use a BMP to go pick up somebody injured. But in this instance, they were doing an indirect fire mission. So what they were doing is they were getting relatively close enough to the front line so they could be within range of enemy positions. Then they would point their gun up and almost act like a mortar or a piece of very short, close range artillery. And then they fire on the position, and then they will correct fire through radio, therefore being told by command or told by somebody watching, say, a DJI Mavic, hey, you were off by 100 meters that way, 100 meters this way, move to the left, move to the right. Okay, you hit. Fire, fire, fire. Keep hitting that position on the Russians in the Srebrenicki forest, which is where we were filming in the Luhansk Oblast.
So that's the BMP mission. And now please continue talking, telling your story. Sorry, man.
Yeah, so we're gonna release that hopefully next week. I'm actually, once this is over, I'm gonna go back to working on that. I have a bunch of notes in front of me, writing about all the footage that I'm reviewing. Other than that, I did a bunch of embeds with an evacuation worker named Dima, who evacuated people out of Mariupol. And also I met him when I was in Kherson, and we were filming aid workers getting civilians, away from the floodwaters. And when we were bombed by the Russians, and they said that we were Azov and they had to bomb our aid mission, and they ended up hitting my good friend John Jones in the stomach, Dima helped drag him from the shoreline. And after interviewing him afterwards, because we were writing a story about the war crime, because a lot of these war crimes just kind of happen, and all it is like a line. It's like 3 people died, and that's the daily report. See you guys tomorrow. And I didn't like that. And so I wanted to give as much detail to just be like, nobody can dispute that this was the Russians that did this. And while doing that and writing that story, I got to know Dima, and I found he was a little crazy, but he had an incredibly gigantic heart. And his story, to me, kind of acted as the complete failure of Russia when it comes to its soft power in Ukraine, because he is a Russian-speaking guy from Dnipro who was raised by his mother to go to Russian-speaking school, who was told, Ukrainian school's closer, go to the Russian school. Because if you go to the Russian school, then one day you can go to Moscow and you can make it big, because the Russians have all the money, they're the center of the world. That's how he was brought up. Then the war happens, he sees all of this destruction brought upon his country, brought to his neighbors, brought to his community, goes to Mariupol, sees the worst things that let's just say the Ruski Mir has to offer, and he has to help pick up the pieces of these former communities that he used to, spend all of his time in, being with his friend in Mariupol, or going to Crimea when he was younger as a kid and spending time there before it was occupied. He hasn't been there since. And getting to speak with him as he communicated with those who would not leave even to now. Like we went to Chasiv Yar and talked to civilians there as the city was being bombed, and talked to people who were refusing to leave, and filming these difficult conversations from people within the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. It was fascinating, and I think he is an incredible and crazy person, and I'm really excited to release the documentary about him.
That's cool. So that's another project you're working on, something else?
Yeah. I've got a few other things, but it's going to be a bit before they get released. I just finished filming my drone documentary. We filmed with FPV teams on the Volchansk axis. We filmed with Baba Yaga teams on the same axis, fixed-wing drone aircraft outside of Chasiv Yar, filmed some training, and I even filmed a rave that was being used to fundraise for drones. Because a lot of people in Ukraine want to relax. They want to do the hobbies and do the things that they used to do before the war. But there's a sense of normalcy that descends upon these events that make people uncomfortable. And that's weird to say, that the normalcy makes people feel uncomfortable, but they don't feel comfortable necessarily partying and having a great time, and chilling with their buddies when they know that there's people across the other side of the country dying for their freedom. And so they felt that they could only host these events if the rave is a fundraiser for drones. And so the idea of people boogieing for weapons was very fascinating, and so I'm including that in the documentary. But yes, I wanted to document drone warfare because I think it is the future of warfare. I got another thing. I might release a piece just on the Volchansk axis, but that depends on me getting one more embed that is still in the works and I can't really talk about. But yeah, that's most of what I'm working on now. The rest of the projects probably won't be released for like another year, so I don't want to talk about it yet.
Okay, thank you. So now the question from Secular Sekai. I'm going back there, Sekai, if you're still there. Do you guys think that Orban's recent announcement of the new Hungarian military operations in Chad is an attempt by Russia to have proxy allies build a bigger pro-Russian network in Africa? So that's a question to you, Dylan.
To me, it's too hard to say. Number one, I don't know much about it. I've been distracted. This story must have gone over my head. But it is hard for me to picture the purpose of a Hungarian military operation in Africa. And I also do find it fascinating that the Hungarian government does not want to expend the resources necessary to defend European security on its own doorstep, but is very willing to expend money to go off to a totally different continent and do security missions that are much less connected to Hungarian security.
No, but they said that is to stop the refugee crisis. This is all like, this is all like, I don't know. I don't really understand. He's going like, the whole thing was saying like, they're getting a lot of refugees from other African countries, and if Chad also becomes unstable, we could witness a migratory floodgate that could send hundreds of millions more people on their way to Europe. And I'm like, yeah, but we also you're besties with Russia, so I think that is also a big thing.
Well, I'm hearing about it for the first time, so I have no comments, and I will say that Orban is a vatnik, and that's what we all got to know about him to judge his actions. Anyway, a question from Russell. What's the kindest gesture Dylan has seen on the front line or in Ukraine?
What's the kindest gesture I've seen in Ukraine? Man, that's a difficult question. I don't really know how to answer that question because people have been incredibly kind to me since I've come into the country, helping me like deal with stuff that I don't understand. Like when I didn't understand certain aspects of the train system, like immediately everybody will put down what they're doing and help me. And a bit to the point where they're like, they'll stop what they're doing, take 30 minutes out of their day, they'd be like, okay, I'm not going to tell you where to go. I'm going to bring you to where you need to go, see you get on the thing that you need to do to get on, and then see you off, make sure that you got the payments. And if you haven't got the payments, I'll chip in like half of it. It's like just going tremendously out of their way to help people. As for acts of kindness, for me, it's always just the lengths that a lot of aid workers will go to in order to try to help people always is sometimes kind of baffling to me. In Kherson, there's a million different stories of heroism after the Novakhovka Dam blew up because those aid workers were getting shelled directly by the Russians. While I can't speak to intent because I'm not the Russians, I personally documented it. I spoke to others. I know a guy called Yannick that the day I got there, he had this gigantic gash on his scalp. And I asked him what it was from, and he said, I was in Kherson, I was out and I was trying to evacuate people, and the Russians shelled us, and this is the result. And it wasn't just him, it was a lot of people. But the next day, what did he do? He went back out and did it again. And so seeing people just go out again and again and again, sometimes people who aren't even from Ukraine doing it again and again and again during the bombing in Kherson, to me, that was disregard of one's old safety, to be considered a military target and to still go, even though they're not military targets, and to still go out there and put their life at risk for people. That was, Kherson had a big impact on me, I would say.
Thank you, Dylan. Mark Sangerman, thank you for 5 gifted memberships, and thank you, The Weasel, for 20 gifted memberships. Next one should be from the Q&A from Community Post, because those in Super Chats have ended. Okay, next one is from Zlauri Out. Dylan, I'm the past when asked one of the things Ukrainians need most. You said demining equipment to help Ukraine clear the way to get south to Crimea. Would you say that is still the case? Also wondering, did you hear about Jake Bro's birthday fundraiser?
Jake Bro's birthday fundraiser kind of blew me out of the water because it came out of nowhere. It just kind of, he didn't like build it up as some like, hey guys, we're going to do the biggest fundraiser. He just fundraised. And I think there was a bunch of conditions that created the perfect storm. He had his own pre-existing audience. People generally at the time knew that Ukraine was going through pretty bad shortages and that the aid hadn't been, even if it had been sent, it hadn't been come over yet. And that was always my problem with the aid was I knew that eventually someone was going to get scared or spooked by some event in Ukraine and it would spur them into action. But by the time they'd be spurred into action, it might be too late. And that was the thing that always scared me about the Republicans playing footsie with abandoning the Ukrainians. But I think that that specific moment where people wanted to help because they knew of the shortages, plus his birthday and the fundraiser, it just all kind of hit with the algorithm, and he just did a beautiful thing there. As for demining equipment, yeah, I still think it's important. The thing that's important about demining equipment is this is going to be important for the next 80 to 100 years. 1/3 of the country is covered in mines and bombs. When I talk to deminers, they talk about a process that will take decades upon decades upon decades upon decades. So from my view, when it comes to demining equipment, there is never a bad time to send over demining equipment to Ukraine because Ukraine is going to need demining equipment for the rest of our natural lives. And so as long as that is the case, I still think it is important. It also has a military benefit of being able to be used to clear out the way if they want to take back their territory. If Ukraine wants to deoccupy its territory, it's going to have to demine some territories as well. So it's helpful from an emergency services perspective because CESU needs it. And I mean, a lot of times units can fundraise. Civilian workers, I've heard a mixed story. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I've heard stories of commanders not wanting their deminers to fundraise because if they fundraise, that can make the commanders look bad, and the commanders do not want to look bad, and so it's also treated in a different way. And so I've heard that it's not as bad as it used to be, but that was a problem earlier in the war that really frustrated me. So demining equipment is still something I would push people towards. It doesn't have the same strategic immediate necessity as it did during the counteroffensive, but it's going to be a necessity for basically forever.
Yeah. Thank you. Jana, any comment on that?
Yeah. I
Only
don't
if you
actually have a comment.
Yeah,
Just-
only if you like.
Mine suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice one. Okay, so we have this one answered. Thank you, Dylan. Let's go to the next one. Next one says, Dylan the man. This is not a question, Dylan, just a compliment.
Affirmative.
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 This was said by Dave Grigg 8604. Maybe you know Dave.
I'm not familiar with Dave Grigg 8604, but I will never forget him. Close to my heart.
Wow. Action This Day asks, there are 1,000 of tanks, M113 vehicles in U.S. sitting in storage. What organization or individual can lead an effort to get surplus weapons to Ukraine?
I mean, it's something that's going to I think it's going to have to probably be led from Congress. It's going to have to be led from a legislative angle because there are plenty of like Ukrainian Americans and pro-Ukrainian Americans who can like yell and shout. And I mean, there are protesters that have been outside the DC Capitol every day protesting in favor of sending aid to Ukraine. I've met them. They're great people. They want to bring attention to Ukraine's struggle. It's really good guys. But they're not the ones that go there and say, okay, send the weapons. It has to be congressionally approved. Now, there are other workarounds you could find for like short-term fixes and stuff, but at the end of the day, if you want the flow that's necessary for Ukraine to win, it's going to have to be congressionally approved. So this is going to have to be legislation sponsored by congressmen. And sometimes this pressure, by the way, can go around the president of the United States. When the first tranche of aid came to Ukraine in 2019 with the lethal aid, the javelins, that was not Trump's initiative. That was Congress's initiative that passed with a veto-proof majority, so he couldn't do anything. That's why he got impeached, is because when he tried to block it, he did something that was unconstitutional. And so if Congress acts, it might not even necessarily matter who is in the White House. And it could also mean if an initiative is building steam, let's say there's an initiative to say, encourage the Biden administration to allow Ukraine to strike air bases with attack. This type of stuff can build pressure on the American government. Mike Johnson, funnily enough, after dragging his feet for so long, has started to say that it is not the United States' place to micromanage the war in Ukraine, and the Biden administration needs to take his hands off the wheel a little bit, which is funny because the main thing he could have done to support Ukraine outside of speaking and yapping would have been, prodding his party in the back after 6 months of delays that cost lives. But still, it just shows this. It has to start in Congress. So having legislators start initiatives to say, hey, we want $5 billion allocated for this specific capability that could be helpful, or these capabilities that the Ukrainians have come to us and told us that they need. But yes, it has. If you're asking where does this need to start, it has to start in Congress.
Thank you. Guys, start giving pluses there to get a free ticket for Mr. Kaplan. I've started putting the names. You can see it on the screen. I hope everything's transparent. So if you see me missing your name, also tell me. Next question. That was a good one, by the way. Great.
I want to know what shampoo and conditioner Dylan uses.
Whatever I can get my hands on. Usually back in the States when I was, it wasn't just whatever was on the shelf. It was Dove, and I like to use something, I forget the brand, but I can, if you're really curious, I can send you a bottle of it. But it's something like mixed with honey, and I like the smell tremendously.
Okay.
Got it. When you were speaking about that, your camera got blurred very much, and when you stopped, it focused again.
Yeah, it was like, this is OPSEC, can't talk about shampoo and conditioner.
What is
Shut
happening?
Shut it down. I can't release the state secrets.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the pluses, guys. I will start working on that. After shampoo question, there is another compliment to you from Mark Garcia. Great to see the next generation of journalists, YouTubers on the job. Go Dylan. I agree.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great to see you there too, Dylan. It's from me.
Aw.
Okay, Paula W. I have long hair, and I have to wonder if his hair does not get in the way of the or drive him crazy. I know it would bother me. I look forward to hearing about his experiences on the front line. Is it bothering you?
It can, and it gets, sometimes when I'm taking off my body armor, it gets it gets tied up in all the Velcro specifically. It gets in between the Velcro, and that's really bad. And sometimes I'll get stuck almost like a cat or something, like a dog in a box of treats, and I'll be have to call my fixer. Hey, grab my Velcro. You got to pull it this way and that way. That's probably the worst, is when I'm taking and putting back on the body armor. And it can also, it can get annoying how matted it can get after a long day with the helmet on, which is also not great for cleaning the hair. But it's not a problem out in the field operating. It's only a problem for me afterwards, trying to preserve this so I do not go bald.
Got it. Thank you for sharing your pain. Okay. No, I won't read this one. Hey, Dylan. First of all, thank you for your service. This one is from Benzo Baby. How would you say this tour has shaped you, and do you feel hopeful for the future? Is there anything we can do to help further?
He says this tour. Does he mean just all my time in Ukraine or this one specifically?
I think this one specific. Because
Well,
I
there's
was
a few-
specifying that you just came back from one.
I'll just assume he means like this because a tour traditionally is like a 5 to 8 month period, and so I would assume that he's talking about just this the general last 5 months or 6 months I've been, last period I've been in the country. I would say when I went to the stabilization point, that had a pretty big effect on me, because filming at a stabilization point is strange as a journalist because I don't really hope for content. It's very strange because I know what I need to film to show, but I don't want anyone to go through the doors because you don't know what's going to happen. And I've heard a lot of stories of people going to stabilization points on a quiet part of the front for 24 hours and then they sleep overnight and they get nothing. But within 10 minutes of me getting to stabilization point, I can't say the location for OPSEC reasons, but it was in Donetsk. It was in the Donetsk region. Within 10 minutes, we had the first injury come in. And within an hour of that, we had the next. And we had, over the 24-hour period we were there, we had 5 people come through, which it wasn't like a wave of people, but it meant that every few hours, including when I was sleeping, I was woken up with injuries. And I think just the cycle of violence, and the cycle of treated violence, or the cycle of just helping and trying to save lives and stabilize people during the most critical part. I mean, this is the critical point where you have to, get this person stabilized before they can get to a bigger hospital, bigger medical institution. Just the amount of weight on the shoulders of these people who work on these stabilization points is immense. The hours that they have to put themselves, definitely when their part of the front becomes incredibly active, is incredible. The hours I've heard of like being awake for 48, 60 hours at a time, passing out for a few, waking back up because now somebody else is in there. And that's how combat goes. And that's how the Russians fight. It's by overwhelming pressure to the point of breaking everything. And that's also true for them. And so just seeing person after person after person after person in front of you, treating them, having them shake on your table in pain, sending them away, and having no clue how the vast majority of them did after you saw them off. I mean, it must leave the mind boggling. And once the war's over, when this is all said and done, are they going to be thinking back for the rest of their lives like, oh, that one guy, Dimitro I met, who, lost his leg and he was in really bad condition. Did he make it? Is he going to go research that? Is that something he's going to be like bothered with for the rest of his life? That's something that really left a big impact on me, was just like, it became a cycle, a very clearly identifiable cycle after 24 hours there. It's like they arrive, you strip them, you identify their injuries, you treat them, you give them whatever you can for pain, send them on the way in the car off to hospital within 15 to 20 minutes. And just again and again and again. The cycle, I guess after a while would just numb you. But yeah, that had a big impact on me, this cycle.
Yeah, I actually have a question from that, because I'm editing some video from Pete from his body cam where he was at a stabilization point in Chasiv Yar, and we can say it because Chasiv Yar is no longer, it's temporarily been occupied now. But they didn't have pain medication for the guys, and you just hear the screams. So because the original stabilization point got bombed and they had a shortage of supplies. So is that something where you look at these things and you look at the wounds you've seen and the people you've seen and the things you've heard and you're like, how am I going to forget this? Or how do I cope with this in a way? Is that something that you struggle with, or have you kind of found a coping mechanism?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I really want to talk about me. I don't want to make this about me. I'll answer a little bit of it, but I want to say something first, because you said something about the screams. Something that really stuck with me was I didn't really get much screaming. I got a lot more shaking. People shaking on the table. And I remember the only time I can remember that I shook like that is when I got a really like deep dark tattoo on a really like bad part of my back, where like it's like it's like where the skin is the thinnest and the bone starts to protrude out. So when people get tattoos here, it's some of the worst experiences. These were the first places I got tattoos because I was a moron. But the shaking left an impact on me. And when I talked to the doctor about screaming, because there was a little bit of screaming, he said, sometimes the screaming is good because then you know where it hurts. Because then when you're grabbing for the wounds and you hear, then you know, oh, okay, there it is. There's metal probably embedded here. We need to find the hole. And then that can speed up the process. But to them, it was so normalized. They had dealt with it for so much. They had become a gear in this medical cycle for so long that it was just part and parcel of the trade. And so it became like, how can we turn their pain into an asset to save their life? Which is a weird thing to say out loud, but that is kind of the purpose of pain, isn't it? Pain is here, it's bad. It's
you know there's something wrong.
It's a giant alarm. And so while for us, pain is something to be terrified of, it's to be horrified of, for the doctor and for them, pain turned into an asset to try to save their life. As for me and how do I deal with it, I don't know. I just, I try to view it from as many perspectives as possible. And I think that if I try to understand it as much as I can, understanding it is a lot of dealing with fear. And it's the same way I've looked about the idea of dying. It's the same way I've looked about a lot of the horrific ways of this war, is that I feel like if I understand it and I let that information pass through me, then maybe I can deal with it. Now that isn't perfect, because, you know, having to absorb that information in the first place, it can be some pretty horrifying truths or horrifying things that you see. But that's, I mean, the way that I've tried to deal with it is just if I push it back, I feel that all I'm going to do is I'm going to build it up in my head and make it a worse problem. And so I just try to allow these things to flow through me. But you need breaks. I know so many journalists in this country that they get to a point where they just can't anymore. They shut down. And I keep telling some guys I know one person who's been like in comatose for almost like 3 years now with barely any break. Spanish journalist is crazy. And I'm like, you can't keep doing this. You got to give yourself some break or you're going to go crazy. And you start to see it affect people. And so time with family was certainly important for me. If I hadn't gone back to the United States for Christmas and saw my grandparents, I don't know how I would have dealt with it. So I would say proper rest and recovery, and trying to understand what I'm looking at, I think has helped me most, and not hide from it, but understand it.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
We have a guest. We have another guest.
Yeah, I
We have
see.
another guest.
Doggo.
His name's Casper.
Casper. I missed him. I was looking at the spreadsheet. Can you show him to us?
He already walked away. He can't be tamed. I could bring him back, but he can't be tamed.
Okay, no problem. So it's a free dog. No taming. Got it. Okay, guys. I need more pluses, please. By the way, $20. Posse K sent $20 with a comment, Dylan and Heart. Yeah, so that's a donation to. Yeah, it's either donation to you, Dylan, or just to express love to you. So please specify there, Posse or Passy. I can pass it to Dylan, definitely.
Or we could just not dispute it and you just donate it to someone who needs it.
Okay, to our fundraiser. Let's do it. So 2 tickets. Passy, do you want 2 tickets? If you don't want them, we can donate them to Rollers. But Rollers had already...
Sure, you can... 2 tickets is fine, I guess. Sure, why not?
2 tickets for you, Dylan, right?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do 2 tickets for Dylan. Awesome. So, but Passy, you can still have 2 tickets because we still have free tickets lying around. Anyway. Yeah.
Preston Reagan in chat said, my heart has been cold since Mariupol. Doggo! Rick, look at the doggo!
I'm missing the doggo again. Shit.
Focus.
I missed it. We cannot hear you now, Dylan. Oh, yes, the doggo. Nice one.
Doggo!
But you muted yourself. Oh, now we hear you. Now we hear you. Awesome.
Yeah.
I see more pluses. Thank you, guys. So, Posse, are you there in the chat? What? Pacifist. Is it your Yeah, is it your donation? Love his work. Someone else can get a ticket. Okay, you don't want a ticket. Okay, no problem. Then those two go to Dylan. Yana, you also got one of the free tickets. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so two for Dylan. Just give me a second. What did I want to? Yeah, I can work on that while you're gonna be answering the next question. So let's go and ask you one. Oh, by the way, there was another question in Benzo Baby's question. Remember, is there anything we can do to help further with your work? I think.
With my work specifically, well, I was demonetized by YouTube for 10 months, so that took a big financial hit, and I'm still trying to recover from that. And so if people wanted to donate, I have a website. They can go to DylanBurns.tv. Every single dime of that money is going to go towards making the work I do here possible. It's either going to go towards editors, it's going to go towards just payment for transportation, payment for gas, payment for fixers, or payment for the people who just generally make the show work, or, you know, rent. I do also like to pay for things like that on occasion. But that's, I guess, the big thing. Any donations there would be great. Other than that, honestly, just, I don't know, donate more to the people who need it, you know. I love UA Animals. They're great. Charity.
Yeah, guys, go and look for UA Animals and donate to them, too. Okay, so we got... Yeah, I'm just kidding. No, I'm still not tired. Okay. Go Dylan. The comment says, next one is from Tuna Otterson. Dylan, did you meet Pete in the forest? Do you know Pete from Project Constantine? You probably
I have not met him. I haven't met him. Everybody tells me about Constantine, and I feel like I've met everybody who knows Constantine, but I've never met Constantine. At this point, I've like built like an image of a man. It's like each time it's like, you know, at like the start of an RPG, they need to talk up like a bit bad guy, so everybody's like, oh yes, the dragon. This is what it feels like Constantine has become. It's just like I hear from everybody all these things about Constantine. Oh, Constantine brought this aid. Oh, Constantine's this great guy. I've never met Constantine, but he sounds wonderful from everything I hear, from all the folklore and songs that have been sung by bards that I've heard.
You know
When
what?
you're in Ukraine, I'll let you guys meet.
You know, you actually met Constantine, you just didn't meet Pete, because meeting Yana means you've met someone from
That is
Project
true.
Constantine.
That is true. I guess I've met. I don't know how many people are behind Project Constantine. So
We've got 3 directors, and so you've met 1/3.
33%.
You've met
Great.
33%.
Nice one. So guys, actually an announcement. Yana, I don't know if you know that as one of the directors, but Pete agreed to join the next Sunday stream, and he's
Oh
gonna
no,
be the
he
guest.
did not tell me that.
He did not tell you. Probably he forgot already.
Yeah,
but I'll
it's like
no.
literally I found out about something because we had a stream yesterday on our channel. We had our stream and then we went on the shows.
Mhm.
And Pete was talking about something there, and I was like, why do I have to come on the shows to find out something? And he's like, I'm so busy. And I'm like, yeah.
That's
But
understandable.
it's really, it's really funny with us, because it's like, did we tell each other this? Have we forgotten about this? You know, so it's really funny how these things work. Yeah.
So
And I'm
yeah,
glad he's going to be on.
he's gonna be on.
Yeah.
You're gonna be on, of course. I will invite Halina. By the way, where's Mama Rose? Is she still here in Ukraine?
I don't know if she's not in Ukraine anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's back in SA. I know she also did like a pilgrimage to some other neighboring country. I don't remember which one.
Got it.
But I know she went there as well.
Awesome. I mean, like,
But yeah.
Having her in Ukraine is cool, but she definitely has to be somewhere safer, too.
Yeah.
Though it's
So
not
I think
super
she's back
dangerous
in
in
SA.
Ukraine. Well, it was dangerous in Odessa, to be honest. It is dangerous in Odessa.
Yeah, where she was. And before
Yeah,
that, she was like
that's what I'm
where Pete was. Yeah.
So all of that was pretty close. Guys, another announcement. On Wednesday, I agreed to have a stream with Marco from Free Azov. Remember the guy from Netherlands? Very energetic one and very swearing one. I managed to get him on the stream on Wednesday, so we're gonna have a lot of energy also on the stream on Wednesday. Dylan, let's go to the next question. Who that was from? Koala with a smile like that might like that first thing I thought was that a bloke to sit down with for food and a chat. Do you understand this message? Because yeah, it seems like a comment, not a question. But
it seems like he's saying he wants to get a beer with me, basically. That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah, that's what I'm also suggesting, but
and I agree if they're buying.
Okay. Yeah, so that was, let me check who that was. Mr. Just Stain. Dylan, what have you been up to lately and how are the Ukrainians doing? I think first question you already answered. Maybe you have some additions to that, and the second one is, and how are the Ukrainians doing?
I guess I'm trying to think. I mean, there's details because I did a lot of stuff, I guess, lately. So filming the captured T-80 was pretty crazy, I gotta say, because
which camp?
It was a T-80.
T-80, T-80 camp. So there were T-80s, the tanks.
Yes, the tanks, and it was wild because I didn't realize how much more logistical load it needed because the type that I was seeing basically requires the same fuel that helicopters needs, but it goes so much faster. Like the T-64 goes I don't know, 65, 70. The T-80 goes can go 110. One of them was saying they have gone in the vehicle 107.
Kilometers per hour. You're talking about
kilometers per hour. Kilometers per hour. They can race down the highway. I was immensely impressed by how fast it was going. But also, those units, it was with the 30th Mechanized Brigade. They have taken some. They have really sacrificed a lot for their armored assaults and for fighting for Ukraine. And they really do. They took a moment to specifically bring out a list of names of those who had died to show us. And I will say, their bunkers, from the ones I saw, their trenches, top tier. They had a fridge. I've never seen a fridge in a bunker before. I've never seen that in a dugout. They had a fridge.
We had when we were in Crimea Forest last year, we installed an extractor fan.
An extractor fan?
Yeah.
What's that?
Because it gets really hot and you don't get a lot of oxygen in the bunker. So we had basically a ventilation system installed.
Yeah. That's good.
Awesome.
Yeah, really good. Wow. So I also started working on the spreadsheet again. Thank you guys for keep buying tickets. So we got to, let me say how many tickets. Those two for Dylan from Passy K. Guys, actually, the last two tickets that Dylan has is 199th and 200th. Can you imagine?
Wow, I got the 200th ticket. Oh my goodness. That's lucky.
Exactly. Dylan is on these tickets, but guys, we can go about 200. That's always very much appreciated. We'll have some money for our next fundraiser. Today I didn't prepare the next fundraiser. I understood that we can actually close this one today, but yeah, we can just keep the money on my PayPal for the next stream. That happened before. Okay, so next question. Let me get back there and then update the page because some of them might be adding up. Awesome picture. Yeah, Dylan, I've posted your picture without your consent that you've been posting on Twitter, the one that your face is all in the mud.
That's not mud, actually. That's not mud. I can tell you the story about that. Give me a second. That's actually soot. That's soot from
What's
the BMP. I was on the back of a BMP-2. That was from when I was on the BMP mission. And all of the exhausts were just going straight.
Shit.
I was in the worst position on the BMP. And the dust on top of it was hitting me. It got so bad that by the time I turned off my camera at the end of the operation, I went to turn it back on like 5 minutes later to take like one more picture. And it said lens not detected because so much stuff had gotten in the camera. And everybody immediately when I got off, I started looking around and my team was like, Dylan, what happened? I was like, what do you mean what happened? And they showed me on the phone that I was just covered in soot. And so I was like, fine, you guys are taking it on the way back. But on the way back, they got a little bit of soot, not nearly as much I did. And I was on the front next to the steaming hot gun, which was not great. And I was like, okay, let me move to the right. And then when I moved to the right, I was on the steaming hot engine that was sparking because it's an old Soviet war horse. So of course it needs to let you know that it loves you and just throw out some sparks. And it was an hour drive there and back, both ways. So 2 hours on that thing, driving around, getting covered in soot. I took a few showers before I was completely awash again.
But was it hard to wash that off your face?
It was surprisingly difficult to get it out of every nook and cranny. Because I remember we went to the operation went into the night. I think we were done at like basically midnight. So we were out there for a while. And so by the time we had gotten back, like everything was shut down, but there was this one location where I was able to get food. I'll just say that. And when I went in there, they had a sink and went to wash my face and I washed it and I looked at the mirror and I was like, oh my God, I look like I'm a battered husband because I looked like I had black eyes. I looked messed up and I just looked depressed too. I looked very sad. I think I have a picture somewhere I can send. And the worst part is, these phone apps where they make you combine your photos, like, hey, I made a photo compilation without asking you, and I made a fake photo album. I don't know if that's just on the Google Pixel or if that's just an Android thing, but the photo app on my phone will randomly just make like, this is a year ago today. I know Facebook does something very similar. And it randomly got like a photo from like 2 years ago where I'm smiling and so happy, and it put together with this photo where I just look just absolutely depressed, sad, just covered in soot. It was like, wow. And it said, what a year will do. And I was like, oh, what a comment. What a comment. Yeah. I'll send you the picture.
Right now?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
I don't have you on Discord. It doesn't matter. You can imagine it. You can imagine depressed Dylan. It's not hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's not hard. Or is it? I'm not sure. Might be hard because you have so much energy usually, so I cannot imagine you. I've never seen you sad or depressed, Dylan.
Depressed people are much more excitable than you think.
Yes, exactly. Well, like, I don't know. For me, when I hear depressed, it's something either like the heavy depression when people cannot get off their bed for days, or just like they're being down. But yeah, usually depressed people don't show that. There is, yeah, it's not like they want it or not. They just how it works. And of course, there are different levels of depression. You can always get up that level. Or two. Okay. Next question.
Oh, by the way, I got the shampoo bottle. It's Botanic Therapy Repairing Shampoo, Honey and Beeswax. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
They don't have that in South Africa.
Probably they don't. Okay. Oh, by the way, did you answer the question? And how are the Ukrainians doing?
Just generally, how are they doing?
Yeah, what do you think? What's your opinion?
They vibing. I don't know what general. It's just a general question. It seems right now morale is kind of started to go back up because, to put it lightly, they like that those boys in Volchansk. They feel that the boost of energy from the fact that they stopped them before they're able to take the city. They're still fighting over the city. Let me be clear. I think some people are already doing victory laps and need to chill out. Like the line is stabilized generally. The government's saying it's stabilized. General media reports it's stabilized. I've talked to different soldiers on the front, and they can never say because the question usually is asked to them is the front stabilized, which they don't know, right? And if you take that and you post it, yeah, sure it is. They're either be saying what they're, to put it bluntly, they've been told to say, or they're saying their part of the front is stabilized, and they're trying to be honest, but they don't have a general, bigger strategic picture. But from my conversations with multiple people on the front, it is stabilized, and the Russians are getting hammered across the border. It is straining them logistically, and I hear some people trying to manipulate the numbers. I saw some Russian talking about, like, we're destroying more Ukrainian armor in Volchansk than they're destroying of ours. But the reason that is because they're basically using no armor, and it's all just infantry assaults. And it's crazy that it's all infantry assaults. But I think, they're trying to see if they can take less armored losses and they can concentrate that armor elsewhere in, like, the Donetsk region. So it sucks for the soldiers on the ground in Volchansk, but I mean, I was talking to FPV teams, and they said that all the armor left within like a few weeks because they were hammering them at the start, and then they just pulled out.
Wow.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Blonde Bombsheller, for 5 gifted memberships. Guys, we still have about 10 tickets, free 10 tickets. And I will ask those who still given a plus to give it, because there were some 2 or 3 tickets for some people, and some of you still haven't given the plus. And some of you still forgot to like the stream. Don't forget to do it. Please like the stream. Please also share it everywhere, because I really like to hear from Dylan, and I really think he is one of the best public speakers I've ever met, Dylan. Really, like, yeah, no flattering. I really think so. You construct everything so good in your head, and then you're actually speaking it. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Stretch plus. Thank you, guys. More questions? Let me see. By the way, guys, I remind you that you have to be here on midnight or at midnight. What's the right version to say, Dylan?
At midnight.
At midnight, yeah. You gotta be here at midnight to win this Kraken Patch. Yeah, pretty shitty rule. I understand. Not everyone can be here in 1 hour and 1 minute, but if you can be here, it will be perfect. I'm doing this just one time.
I don't think I can be here for 1 hour and 1 minute. So if I win, just cycle it again then.
Okay, Dylan. Sorry. Sorry that you're not going to be able to be here. How much time you have for us?
I can do another 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay. Then I will focus on the questions. Love from Randers, Denmark. To you, Dylan. Great pick. I know he was still dirty 2 days ago. That should be a great stream lyric. It will be interesting to hear the questions. I'll definitely watch live or later. Have a good day. Thank you, Lord Farm, but there was no question there anyway. That was funny to hear. Okay, let me see if more comments has been added. I don't think so. Yeah, here in the community post, we've done it. Guys, I'm going to be doing more of these Q&As, so please check the community tab. If you don't know where it is, here on the channel, here, community tab. I think it's 6th tab. There, go there, and there are some reports from me, like weekly reports about the fundraisers, or some here's Janine had an urgent fundraiser for walkie-talkies, and I reposted it. Another report, raffle, and stuff like that. So yeah, Janine was asking me to shout out her new fundraiser on the stream, but I think I will do it after we ask Dylan questions, because I will spend 5 minutes on shouting that, and we have only 20 minutes with him. Okay, guys, when Dylan is going away from us today, we need to still be here to get to the raffle. Okay, just 59 more minutes. please stay here, because I don't want more disappointments. Of course, if you need to go, then go. But yeah, we need to try it. at least once.
Eric is going to be like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, guys, another quick update before I ask the next question, because I need to still open the Discord. While I'm doing that, I will tell you that today, 2 days ago, I received the first... We have the electricity back on.
Power is back.
Amazing. So no, I won't be doing anything now. Anyway, I just want to say that I got first payment from the shop, from the merch shop. We got a profit of $92.99, and 50% of it minus 5% of taxes I paid because I'm doing it officially now. I paid 5% taxes to Ukraine, and I will donate today 50% of it, so like $51.50. So yeah, something good. You know, it could be much more if we didn't fuck up with the price of the cap, because we actually set the price that is lower than the production, and we went on minus. We actually paid more to produce it than we got the profit. So yeah, it was like minus $3 on one cap and plus $1.3 on other cap. So there was basically no. So yeah, guys, unfortunately we're gonna set the price. It has an embroidered on it, you know, Rickroller embroidered, and this is why it's pretty expensive to produce. So we're gonna be lifting the price from 25 to 40 tomorrow. So if you want to get us some expenses, you can buy you can order one today. Okay. You can still order some caps. Yeah, so just wanted to share this news with you.
I love how you're like totally here, like helping your community, but also shooting yourself in the foot. It's like...
Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm doing time to time. Okay, so Christopher Bender, why isn't the Sambush tactic not working against the planes dropping the bombs? What's the Sambush? Like SAMT ambush?
Sambush? I think he's talking about ambushes, like anti-air ambushes, I assume.
Yeah, I think so.
I did a embed with air defense teams. That's actually, I think, what I talked the least about. But it was the 42nd, and can I just say, the 42nd were consummate professionals. They're also just really chill guys, really nice people. And
40 what? Sorry?
42nd, the 42nd Mechanized Brigade.
Ah, 42nd. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, they have the they have the helmet and the stone towers next to them. If anybody knows, like, have seen all the patches, but I went with them, and there seems to be about like 2 layers of air defense. There's a layer for drones that is there to shoot down drones, say 8 to 10 kilometers from the front line, vaguely, obviously, like. It varies depending on the conditions. And then there's another line that is there to, you know, shoot down and keep away the Russian jets, scare them, basically. And that's how it was explained to me, is that they have 2 jobs. One is actually shooting down the aircraft, and the other one is making it so they don't want to operate. Because if the Russian jets are scared to operate in a region because they lost one, like one got shot down, then they're going to be less likely to be dropping these bombs from real close. And, you know, that would help protect the soldiers on the ground. And so usually how it happens is the Russians will get closer and closer and do more and more frequent bombings, and then they'll lose a jet. And then after they lose a jet, the ratio will come down again, and then the escalation ladder will start up once more. They called it probing. The Russians are basically like probing forward with the bombings. That's the best way I can describe it. As for why it's not working, it's partially... it has to do with an air defense shortage, that they don't have enough air defense systems. And when the Russians are constantly firing air rockets and drones and missiles at major cities, and it's hitting civilian infrastructure. We just saw the bombing at Kharkiv today, injured over 50 people, killed 3. Absolute tragedy. While that's going on, the Ukrainians like, okay, we got to get these new air defense systems to protect the major cities and protect our military production, which we're trying to get. We're getting all these big foreign deals with Rheinmetall and these other defense companies. You got to protect these assets, because the Russians immediately, once the companies are going to get set up, hell, before they get started up, they're going to try to strike them. So you want to protect these assets. But on the other hand, you want to make them uncomfortable to operate. So you want to put them in an offensive capability. And so right now I'm super blurry. I just noticed it. But but my point is that they're trying to find this. If they put all of it into like on the front offense capabilities, it would put these assets at more risk and means that they wouldn't be back defending cities doing a defensive role. So there's a bunch of technical stuff that I could pretend that I know to explain a lot of the part of the problem, but a substantive part of it that I do know for sure is supply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dylan. So yeah, I was showing the 42nd Brigade. I actually didn't see it. That's definitely not a media brigade.
Honestly, I tend to avoid media brigades. I've never filmed with Azov. I think the most media brigade I filmed with is Kraken. I think that's probably the most. And I did an interview with Kraken.
They are definitely very
Media.
brigade, yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know why I don't know the 42nd Brigade? Because it was actually also formed only on 25th of January,
Yeah,
2023.
it's very recent. It's a year old. It's a year old.
It's 1 year old. Well, year and a half already. But anyway, that gives. Anyway, some brigades might have the bigger media, even in this time, because like 47th Brigade was formed in the end of 2022, right? And look how famous.
2022, yeah, or early 2023, one of the two.
Yeah, look how famous they are now. Okay. Are the soldiers less important than mood of the civilians? What do you mean, Christoph Bender?
I don't. Are they talking about conscription? Maybe they mean like, is recruiting all these soldiers more important than the negative morale boost it could have to the civilian population?
Maybe.
I'm extrapolating a lot here, but that's the only way I can interpret it.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, of course, the morale of the general public matters. Of course, how conscription matters, and even though it needs to be done fast, it cannot be done haphazardly, where you start grabbing a bunch of people that should not be grabbed. There's nothing can be more devastating to Ukrainian morale and the humanity of Ukrainians than watching somebody in a trench who should never, ever, ever be on the trench on the front line of a major war because they have some injury or because, to be quite frank, they're just way too old and they shouldn't be in that type of position. And so it has to be done correctly. But if this war is going to continue, Ukraine needs soldiers to fight it. Russia is the largest country on the planet. They have 150, 60 million people, and they're recruiting foreigners. Ukraine has foreigners fighting for them too, but they're people here for ideological reasons. Not a lot here for that pay. Or on the other side, you've got people who are coming over exclusively overseas for money. They're mercenaries. And while there's a few of them on the Ukrainian side, they just can't afford it. And so they need manpower. And while there's an advantage that the Ukrainians have one front to focus on forever, and that's the Russians, they're not going to war with Poland or Hungary or anything like that. Well, okay, almost certainly not going to war with Poland and Hungary and the rest of them. The Russians have to divide their resources elsewhere. And so that's some advantage it gives them, but it doesn't make up. It doesn't make up for it all. And so they have to get more soldiers and make the Russians pay a lot more in their soldiers than the Ukrainians. And that's going to be that's the secret to success forever. But that's public knowledge. Everyone knows this at this point.
Another question. John Moy, 8276. Dylan, what's the talk of the ground about rotation and recruiting? Yeah, that's the first question. There are 3 of them there.
On the ground talk about rotation and recruiting. The big question is there's like a social unease about the conversation around draft dodging and people participating in draft dodging. People feel the people on the front don't like the idea, especially those. Not all of those got picked, but a lot of those don't like the idea that there are those who are staying way away from the violence and are able to just separate themselves from it and benefit from the security that they're not contributing to. There are others that feel differently and are like, I don't really know if I want somebody here who isn't super passionate about being here and everybody makes their own decision, and they think like, I know what this fighting takes. This isn't for everybody. This type of fight. I mean, there are some people that if they came here, they'd break down immediately. I remember talking to one Ukrainian psychologist. He was working with an artillery unit with the M777 howitzers, about this one guy who said to him, I want to fight. I want to do my job. I want to liberate my home. But when the firing starts, I cannot control my body. And if that is true for some people, then it makes sense that they would want to stay away from violence. But there is an undercurrent conversation about this that is a real sticking point, and it's part of the reason I think it is. Just the general conversation around mobilization is very tense right now in Ukrainian society. But if you poll people, the data still states that the Ukrainians want to continue fighting, and if they want to continue fighting, they have to do what's necessary to continue fighting. Because if not, then you have to acknowledge that fact. If it's gotten to a point where you can't continue fighting, then you would have to acknowledge. But nobody says that because nobody wants to accept it. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants to fight against that future, and they want to continue defending their country as long as is necessary. And so if that's the case, then this conversation has to be had, and it has to be settled from a legislative angle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Second question there was, is the latest ammunition having an effect? Now, you already said that it is having an effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still an ammunition disparity. They still want more shells. They still need more air defense systems, but it's not as bad as it was in February, which still isn't it's not the biggest hip hooray. Like there's still a huge deficit. And so I want to emphasize that. I don't want people to get complacent because that's what I feel happened last time a little bit. But it is certainly better than what it was 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And the third one here was, should we all just be buying drones? No, not just drones, guys. Not just drones. Dylan?
There's so much other stuff that's needed. Night vision equipment is necessary. Medical equipment, medical aid is always stuff that's needed. Demining equipment, like I've talked about a million times over, is always needed, not only for the military aspect, but for CESU and civilian workers. There's a million different things that are needed on the front. Starlinks are still needed, even though, not everyone loves Elon Musk. I don't like Elon Musk. But I mean, definitely now with the outages, batteries and generators and stuff like that is deeply needed, which also helps power Starlink, which helps keep the country connected. There is a need for more vehicles. There's a need for a lot of things. But of course, drones is one component of it. Drones is something where the Ukrainians have kind of a technical and skill advantage, I would say, at this point. After filming this drone documentary, and I'm basically done with it, I would say that they have the edge at the very least. But they're not leaps and bounds. They're not leaps and bounds ahead, mind you. But they have the edge. But they want to keep that edge. They want to expand that edge. It wants to be an area where people are like, Ukrainians are dominant in drone warfare. So yes, drones are one of those things where you buy the drone and then you see the drone used on the battlefield. It's like such a direct line. It's so easy to track. That's why people like it. And it's got that kind of it has the glory. I don't want to call it the glory of violence, but it has violence attached to it that you can visibly see, which is like here's the physical confirmation of your contribution to the war effort that a lot of these other donations don't. Like I saw a NAFO vehicle the other day, and I wanted to take a picture of it, but I couldn't for OPSEC reasons. And for a lot of the people who donate those NAFO vehicles, they're not going to get like every single month, like here's NAFO, here is this vehicle out there at the front fighting, like da-da-da. So I understand why people go for the drones and they love the drones, but there's a lot of other areas you can help. UA animals, again, I'm going to keep plugging UA animals.
By the way, I started interrupting you there just because you asked. I was singing Never Gonna Get You, Never.
I like the backing track. It's good. It's good.
Good. Okay, next question, and that's a good one. This is from RF from USA. Does the Ukrainian military have to okay the final first cut from Dylan?
Always. Yes.
Always.
Always presume that. Now, that's not necessarily always true. For example, the DEMA documentary I'm doing isn't going to get okayed by any military organization because I filmed with DEMA. He was an aid worker. So I show it to DEMA and he's like, yee, and then it's good, you know? But if it's anything where I'm filming with the armed forces, they will have to okay it, of course, for OPSEC reasons. And I remember reading this one listing from one of the units that was trying to here's the things that are available to film with us. And it said specifically, you will have to show us the footage before you release it. We do not want to control anything you have to say about the war. We don't care what you have to say about the war. All we care about is making sure our boys don't get killed. And that's the idea, that they don't want, because this has happened, some photos getting published that show stuff that wasn't approved to be shown. It's geolocatable, Russians track it, that a bunch of people die. And these units, their primary goal, being on the front lines of the war, is going to be winning the war and getting home to their families. And so they don't want a journalist to be their opponent in that. And a journalist shouldn't be their opponent in that. A journalist's main job should be to tell the story. And you don't need to get somebody killed to tell the story. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes they get shots and it's like, oh, this is a great shot, but that's geolocatable. And you got to do your best to work with it, because at the end of the day, that's not something you can take back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next one. Rick and Dylan, do you think Ukraine should begin an ROTC Weekend Warrior program for 18-24 years olds? I don't know what is this like.
ROTC is I was familiar with junior ROTC. I didn't really do ROTC in college, but it's kind of like Army juniors almost. I don't know how to describe it anything else but Army junior. It's where a kid goes to do a bunch of Army stuff while not being in the Army, like getting pepper sprayed to run through obstacle courses and other stuff. I don't know. I never did ROTC, so I can't really describe the whole experience. But it's basically Army Junior, where they prepare people to be in the armed forces while not being in the armed forces. And then eventually, once you come time to get old enough to join the armed forces, you would then be at a level where you could be integrated very easily, and you might be able to get a position as an officer or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
But Ukraine already has programs like that to some extent. It's not, I don't know how integrated it is, but I've seen junior warrior type stuff where they're training their kids to do. But a lot of it was is mostly civilian led initiatives from what I've seen, but I haven't studied a lot into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, my answer is going to be short. Yes, that's not a bad idea. Danab, shouldn't the West start detaining all those Russian propagandists and oligarch kids that are freely roaming in the West and threaten to send them to the front?
No. I just that would be horribly. I mean, I'm a humanitarian. The idea of locking somebody up and sending them into the front line of a war because they're somebody's kids, that's. I know a lot of shitty people, and the idea of me going after the kids for what their dad did, it's something that's I think deeply immoral. And the thing is, it's not even hey, deport them, which would already be something I'm already uncomfortable with and would probably still say no against. But I can at least see the humanity and you're basically saying, no, you will not have your family gallivant around the world spending your stolen wealth I can at least see an angle to argue for. But you're talking about what, you're trying to kill them for just being born to that? Nah, I don't feel comfortable with that.
What about propagandists? Because there
what
are a
about
lot
propagandists?
There was a question. First, there was all those Russian propagandists, and then oligarch kids. So kids, yes, I agree with you. I also don't like this. Well, they should not pay for the sins of their fathers in one hand, but if they are really spreading the Russian world out there, then I think they should pay, because it's their doing already. But of course, you need to prove that. You need to prove that they are spreading the Russian world out there, meaning, hating U.S. and propaganda and invading other countries and wishing U.S. to be destroyed. That there are some Russians in U.S. that are saying there. But we're not talking about only U.S. We're talking about the West. I think the question is about the West. Yeah. So in general, what about Russian propagandists, not the kids of oligarchs?
Well, it would still be, I don't think that we can arrest them and then send them to the front line of a war that the United States is even formally fighting in. That, a bunch of legal precedent, a bunch of humanitarian precedent, it would be very, I don't know if that's his question, because his question was about sending them to the front, right? So So if we're talking about
no.
how to actually
Not sending. It was and threatened to send them to the front. So not
okay, well,
sending, just threaten.
I don't know. That feels like a distinction without a difference. But
Yeah.
I understand. As for the propagandists, I've been trying to figure out how we deal with this too, because I very much believe in the First Amendment. I consider myself a patriotic American. Okay, la-di-da, Yankee Doodle dandy, right? I consider myself all those things, and I believe that the First Amendment is great. The idea that the government, it's a protection for the citizen against the government. It's not about this is what the government has to do for you. It's about this is the power you have to keep the government back from restraining you. The government cannot restrain you. It does not have the power to do that. And I like those types of restrictions on the government. I want to preserve them as strongly as I can. But information warfare is part of warfare. It is a vital part of warfare. It can be used to destabilize states and destroy states, either by dealing with, like, for example, emergency health response. I was just seeing some stories coming up about a possible intelligence operations to get the Chinese public not to believe in vaccinations. Now, putting aside whether or not that story is real, not real yet, because it's an incredible story, but that shows how information warfare could be used to make a public part of warfare, their information intake, make them think, oh, the healthcare system doesn't work. Oh, I don't need to get vaccinated. Screw all this important health stuff. And then it can hurt the stability of the state. It can kill people. It can lead to real tragedy. And so trying to find a balance as Americans or as a country that feels like a freedom-loving republic, I want to find some way to, at the very least, have transparency, complete and total transparency when dealing with it, so that I know that the person I'm talking to is being paid by the Russians to do what they're doing. Scott Ritter is being paid by the Russians because he's a kitty diddler who could never get a job in American media, because most Americans, whether you believe it or not, think that kitty diddling is ew and disgusting, and we don't want it associated with us. Jackson Hinkle is going around doing state propaganda for the Russians directly. He's got paid by foundations that are funneled money by the Assad family. Like this is transactions that should be public and that should be known about. And that when they are reminded of this, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. They get angry. When I confronted Jackson Hinkle directly about the money he's taken from the Assad regime, he responded by trying to go after like my family and going crazy. He freaked out because they don't like that transparency, because the transparency breaks down their Jenga tower of lies, because their whole shtick is we hate the deceit, we hate the corruption, we hate the media manipulation and the establishment. And when they show themselves to be as corrupt or more corrupt than the political establishment that they are railing against, then it's shown to be about power, not about principle. And I think that type of transparency could be a useful tool. And I think it also empowers public discourse, not suppresses it. So as much as I maybe in the future will change my mind about certain restrictions, because I understand like information warfare is a part of warfare. Like if somebody's spreading misinformation about a public health crisis that is of vital interest, like a vaccine that is literally needing to save everyone's life, maybe I'll change my mind in the future, but this is the one recommendation I can make right now that I feel is within my principles.
Okay, thank you. There was another good question. Do you think Hassan's following mass revenge reported Dylan? From Cheryl Wakely.
I don't want to say that. I don't think Hassan's followers got me mass reported. Hassan's followers are kind of all over the place. He's got such a gigantic audience that they're not all of the same ilk. I mean, they have a pretty bad toxicity problem, just the way they interact with other communities. But I mean, Hassan himself has a pretty bad toxicity problem. So I mean, I think, it's not pretty, it's a kind of one-to-one line there. So it could be that a few of them did, but I don't want to make any estimations or accusations without evidence. When I did my report on Hassan, I stick to the facts. I stick to statements he said. I showed video clips. I was transparent. When people misinterpreted him, I did my best to give the original context and stop the interview to be like, wait a second, I need to give you this because it's only fair as a reporter. I did my best to do that. He did not do me that same courtesy, and that is what it is. But I don't want to change that way. So I don't want to make accusations because I don't want to lower myself to name calling. But he is a bitch.
Yeah,
I don't want to call him names, but
okay. The one from Pat Chellen. Do you think the latest with North Korea and Vietnam will escalate the war on a global scale?
I think the South Koreans are about to show some ferocity on the foreign stage that we haven't seen in a very long time. I think that the South Koreans have the Russians by the balls, figuratively and almost literally, because it's so tight. Because they put them in a position where no matter what they do, they lose. Because on one hand, from the proposal that the South Korean government's making, and I talked about this proposal before they even said it, because immediately I knew what was going to happen, because it just made too much sense. It was if the North Koreans are to continue to supply the Russians from their stockpiles, because now they've done it for a while. They're not going to endlessly do it. They're a starving junta based upon monarchy, communism, corruption, or the most unstable of foundations you can imagine. The most ridiculous, fantastical, like Looney Tunes ass regime you can imagine on the planet. It's right there. It can't endlessly supply the largest war in the world when it's not getting some benefit. So it needs something. But the things it wants, number one, it's going to want things like being able to have its laborers go to Russia to bring in hard currency. That's something that Russia benefits from, because then they get laborers, foreign laborers, when they have a labor shortage. The North Korean gets import currency that they can use to evade sanctions. That's one benefit they can trade. But what the North Koreans want is long-range targeting technology. What the Russians are threatened to give them is long-range targeting technology. What the South Koreans don't want them to have is offensive weapons that can be used against them, like, i.e., long-range targeting technology. When they're strapping nuclear weapons to the end of it that can wipe out cities, not only in South Korea, but in Japan, in Guam, that is the United States territory, or West Coast America. They have increased the range of their missiles. They have increased it. This isn't like 2007 anymore. North Korea is a nuclear armed power. And they have all these sanctions placed upon them, but Russia is now helping them to evade them. They've been helping them for years, but in a much smaller window, much more under the radar. Unmarked Russian transport ships bringing in limousines for the Kim regime, and you're bringing in all of the luxury goods so they can enjoy the comfort of the West while hating every bit about it. Jealousy? I don't know. It doesn't matter. What does matter, though, is if the North Koreans continue this path with the Russians, the South Koreans are going to start sending high-quality 155mm shells to Ukraine in large number, which is NATO standard. And in Europe, there are a ton of guns that fire that standard, including guns that Ukraine has imported, like the M77 howitzer, which I've embedded with, and a bunch of other Western guns provided by the French, provided by I think the Danish, even by a ton of different people throughout Europe. And so that specific supply that can help rebalance to not only talk about like, oh my God, look at, hey, we've recovered from February, and now the shell disparity is still pretty bad, but I mean, at least we're not starving anymore, to, oh my goodness, we're closing the shell disparity gap. That's how you really change the landscape of the war. And they don't just provide a few of those shells. They are one of I think that they're second largest arm producing country in the world. I think people don't realize how significant South Korea could be for changing the landscape of the war. And they produce a lot of air defense systems that could be of great use to the Ukrainians. It's like air defense and artillery shells. These are two things they do great and Ukraine is in desperate need of. And so when you're in Russia's position, do you keep importing these tin can ass artillery shells, you know, that, I mean, they still work, and at the end of the day, blow up, they still kill people, and no matter what, you can have the worst shell in the world. If it still kills a man, it still kills a man. It works. It helps keep their shell dominance. But are you going to take those shells and whatever else the North Koreans can roll out from the last 80 years of their repressive regime, from their old Soviet stockpiles, Chinese stockpiles, whatever it may be. So the South Koreans can give Ukraine the most up-to-date, like clean, modern produced shells that are going to have a much lower deficiency rate, that are for much more modern artillery systems that can shoot longer distances, possibly air defense systems, which then messes with a whole other part of the Russian war plan. Is it worth it for those shells? And if they say yes, well, then they have the South Korean problem. If they say no, well, then they just missed out on all that North Korean equipment that they could have had. So this really, no matter what, it's a lose-lose situation for the Russians. And for the South Koreans, if this diplomatic attempt to scare them wins, then they have to contribute nothing to back the Russians off of North Korea through deterrence, which I think would be a huge diplomatic win for the South Koreans. And if it doesn't, then they get to have a justification for removing this longstanding South Korean policy on weapons exports and send this stuff to Ukraine and have a real demonstrative strategic effect on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a long and awesome answer. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you. Can that be what I wrap up the show with?
Of course. There was also Vietnam there. What do you think about them?
Oh, Vietnam. Vietnam imports Russian weapons like RPGs, air defense systems, stuff like that. That hasn't performed too bad. I think they're probably going to continue to import those weapons, but I don't think that Vietnam is going to have really much of a demonstrable effect on the war in Ukraine. I think more people talk about it as in reference to Asia and the conflict between the United States and China. And Vietnam has much more history with feuding with the Chinese than they do with the Americans. And they have much more reason to basically be, all of their war planning is against China. None of it is against the United States in modern times. And so they have bigger strategic reasons to be close enough to the United States to have a working military relationship, which makes me certain enough that they're not going to start gallivanting towards getting either too close to China in a way that would be detrimental to the United States interests, or helping the Russians really at all in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you don't think Vietnam becomes an enemy of Ukraine like North Korea?
No, I think that because North Korea has no reason to have to keep the United States' favor. Vietnam has a big reason, and that reason is its upstairs neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Let me put it this way. In Vietnam's capital, there is a war memorial for all of the struggles that they've had for independence and freedom, etc. And the United States, there's a little pillar that represents the United States war with Vietnam. It's 2 feet tall. Then there's one that's 10 foot tall. It's supposed to represent the French occupation, last a couple of decades. And then there's a 50 foot or 100 foot tall pillar, and it's China, because they've had so much history of conflict with the Chinese, and a time where China has controlled Vietnam. And right when the United States left Vietnam, China invaded. And they had a war then too. And so all of their defense planning is against China. So who is the main power in the region that has a strategic priority to be in Asia right now and is trying to build up its forces to confront the Chinese, that could be a partner to Vietnam outside of the United States? My answer, honestly, would be no one. There's no other person that fulfills that role. So they have a reason to be beneficial with the United States that keeps them from being too close to Russia to help them with the war in Ukraine, at least in my view. I still think they'll buy their weapons, especially since it's probably going to get a lot cheaper, and Vietnam wants to get their bang out of their buck. But I don't think they're going to help Russia outside of maybe some trade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I believe your prediction, if we can call it a prediction. I'm not sure. Oh, someone just bought 10 tickets, I think. $100. Thank you for the donation. So guys, before I finally let Dylan go, I will remind you that in just 24 minutes we're gonna raffle this Kraken Patch, and to win it, if you were buying tickets, you gotta be present for it here in the chat. So please don't go anywhere for the next 24 minutes. Christopher Hancock, $100 in memory of my old blind pup that died this week. I am sorry to hear that. And as many raffle tickets as it will buy. It will buy you 10 tickets, and I'm sorry for your loss, because I've lost my cat last year, and it hurts a lot until this day. Dylan, do you have some pets?
Yeah, it was terrible when I had to put my cat down. But I still have my other childhood cat from when I was a kid. I still have them. They're 14 years old now, getting up there. Going on 15, gonna be 15 soon. He has one tooth that sticks out, and his tongue is always sticking out all the time now. He's getting real old, but he's still adorable. His name's Rascal.
Rascal, nice, awesome. Well, I wish him to live long and prosper. You know.
Amen.
Okay, Dylan, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it was such an awesome talk, and I really like that we addressed a lot of questions to you. Thank you for answering them. Your answers are always very, as I told you, structured and very interesting. Once again, I want to compliment you on this. Always such a pleasure to have you here. And we always say that we gotta meet here in Kyiv, and we never do that.
Well, you know what? You want to get dinner this upcoming week? I'm going to be back in Kiev.
Let's do it. I am here all the time, so this upcoming week we're meeting. Awesome, Dylan.
Awesome.
Then,
see you then.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to me for this little bit of time I was on here. Hope you have a good time. Good luck with the raffle, everybody. Hope you win. And if you do win, either congratulations or cycle it again. Make it the most expensive patch in history. Let's see if we can achieve that.
Well,
thanks so much for having me on. If any of you want to see my films, it's Dylan Burns TV on YouTube, DylanBurns.tv if you want to donate and support my journalism work on the ground, and DylanBurnsLIVE for my coverage that I do like this.
Yeah, it's all in the description, guys. Go check it out. Dylan's link tree is there. Dylan, man, thank you for doing all your work. Please keep, I don't even need to ask you. You will keep pushing and helping Ukraine. So thank you, my friend. Thank you for all that. And see you next week.
See you next week, man. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, Dylan. Dylan is amazing. I always love listening to him. And
very insightful. Very insightful,
Very. He's very bright. And very
I feel like I need to take notes when he talks.
Yeah, same like